Hey, quick favor before we jump into today's episode. Fire Apparatus and Emergency Equipment is putting together a short listener survey, and it's one of the biggest ways you can help shape this show right now. It takes about 3 minutes, no fluff, just a few questions about who you are, what you're dealing with on your department, and what you actually want to hear from us. We read this stuff. It directly drives what we cover next. So if there's a topic you've been waiting for, this is your shot to push it forward. You'll find the link in the show notes or just head to sprw.io/STT-RQTQW. Fill it out on shift, in the kitchen, on the way home, wherever. It really does make a difference. Alright, let's get into it. FDIC, here we come. Visit the Fire Store at booths 110 and 111 for Streamlight, MSA, Lion, Seek, and more. Plus, score free customization on any Box 31 FDIC purchase made directly at our booth. Don't miss it.
Hi, Chris McClune here with Fire Apparatus and Emergency Equipment. Welcome to this episode of Talking Trucks. As usual, my guest is Ricky Riley. And today we're going to be talking about a couple, it's not really like a themed show, I feel. We're going to talk about dealer or factory training for your next rig. We're also going to talk a little bit about using social media when you're doing your research. It's not a knock on social media, but and I'll share an anecdote when we get closer to that question about why I started to think of it. Because, you do need to watch what you're looking at. Sometimes people can be crafty about what they're showing or what they're talking about. You really do have to kind of do a trust but verify kind of thing. But first, before we get into that, we're going to talk about FDIC as well. That's coming up. This week. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But Ricky, I wanted to talk first. You brought this topic to me. And that's the importance of factory or dealer training after the rig is delivered, which I guess saying factory training will be a little bit of a misnomer there. But really, we're talking about getting trained on that particular rig, at the final inspection or at the point of delivery by either a factory person or a dealer. So I guess first, what made you think about that topic? Because again, this was yours. I didn't have to think of this one. So that's always helpful when I don't have to think of what we're going to talk about. But what brought that? Why was that top of mind for you?
I guess I'm just as I do the consulting, my regular job, and then get to see the fire service today. I'm still in touch with that on a daily, if not hourly basis. It's to watch who's going to be driving our fire trucks next, who's going to be taking these roles next, and you can see them in firehouses. I mean, when I travel to these different places and do a class or something like that, you can see the young generation, up and coming in the fire departments. Just they're in roles to take over, and I don't think they got the education that they need. And it's not their fault that they didn't get it. It's just that now we have younger truck committees, younger engine committees, whatever you want to call them, coming out, and they don't know what they don't know, and it's not their fault. So this is the prime time for the student of the fire service, or even if they don't want to be an engineer, or they don't want to be a driver, or they don't want to be the next on the next truck committee or the next chief officer, but you have to have this education. I mean, the amount of time, effort, and expense that we're putting into the apparatus today is that we have to educate everybody on these things. It's been shocking to me to even watch some of the simplest pump things, like how to test the pressure governor, how do you, all that sort of stuff that it misses a generation. It's missed people, either training classes or certification classes, for you be like, I assume there's like a Pennsylvania pumps class or whatever, or driver operator class. And, Maryland has one, Delaware has one, where, I teach with their fire school at times. And it's just, what is the relevance of that to the end user being the firefighter that's taken that class? I mean, most of the time they have to take the class to be able to drive or do whatever. So I mean, hey, I'm just here to get the class. I'm here to get my certification so I can do that. And then what are we actually teaching them? Certification classes, good, bad, or indifferent, I don't think are up to date with the fire apparatuses being delivered today. I don't think I don't think they've caught up with the technology that's in the apparatus. And then on top of that, you and I have talked about it. In a past class or a past podcast, was that are we even pumping the fire truck correctly with the hose and nozzles and everything that we have in the fire service today that is far outpacing any textbook that can be published. I mean, if you fire engineering books, Dan and Doug, who are great friends of mine and with Traditions, you just go back how long it takes them to write a book.
Mm-hmm.
The year or 2 years that it takes, and then the amount of information that changes in our fire service today is incredible, and especially when it comes to fire apparatus. It's the options. It's what everybody kind of thinks of them. And one option that I ran across this weekend teaching a tower class is that the company had put a electrically powered drain valve for the waterway. And I'm like, what is this button for? What is this? Why do you have an electric valve? And, this is a part of our procedure that, before you retract and everything, that you open this valve and we have a 3-inch valve in there rather than the standard like 2-inch or 1.5 that's at the bottom of that pipe. And we open this valve and it dumps all the water out. So, and I'm like, well, that's just one of those things that, if you're in a fire department, whether it be volunteer or career, are you the driver? For instance, this was a tower. Are you a driver? You're going to, drive the rig there, position it. If it's a quench, you're going to pump it. You're going to operate the aerial. But then you got to have firefighters that are checked off on the basket, so they can operate the basket. The company officers, and then do they know all these things? Do they know, what all these switches do on the panel that's either at the pedestal or in the basket itself? And so, as we go to talking about all this training, is that I think it's critical now that, one, people do not like to look stupid. And I can appreciate that. I look stupid every day because I ask my mechanics 1,000 questions. What does this valve do? What is this on the engine? What are you talking? Why is this broke? What does this do? How does it operate? But I'm afforded that opportunity because of my position, and I'm able to go out and look at fire trucks every day. Whereas, the volunteers or even career people do not get to get on a fire truck every day or get underneath the hood or look underneath, at the pump or anything like that. So I think it's important that, either the factory, be the manufacturer provides training. So look, you'll get some training. You'll get it with an aerial. The manufacturer is required to send out a person to teach you how to use the aerial. And I think I can speak for all manufacturers, and they can curse me next week at FDIC if they don't agree with me. But they have to give that class because of all the injuries, the line of duty deaths, or severe injuries and breaking and damaging of their apparatus, and nobody was trained on it. How to set the jacks up, how to operate their aerial, what is the safe way to operate the aerial. When we talk about getting too close to power lines and how to properly set the jacks, and so they have to come do that, and that is an extremely boring and dry class. It is, but it's I completely understand it from the manufacturer side, because they have to protect themselves. You give firefighters a $2 million piece of aerial apparatus, and we're going to try to push it to its limits the very first day we get it. What can we do? How can we set it up? How can we tilt it side to side? How can we use the aerial? How can we do this faster? Anything to do our job better. And I've been there, I've done that. But now to understand that, hey, there's a safe way to operate the aerial. There's a safe way to operate the tower. You have to operate within these parameters. But I think it's important to get young firefighters to these classes. So look, it could be either the factory comes out and teaches you literally. Really, literally, how to use every switch. Every switch has a label on it, and the ones up top are easy. Road array, light bar, scene lights. Those are the easy ones. As we get lower below the windshield, they start to gain in a little bit of complexity. When we're talking about, regen inhibit switch, we're talking about the generator. Is it PTO driven? What speed do we have to have it at? To click it in. The high idle. When does the high idle have to come on? When does the high idle not come on? What does the load manager do? And how it sheds that. So all these parts and pieces that kind of go in there. Look, and it all depends on who you're going to get to do it. I mean, if the factory's going to do it, that's something that certainly we can put in our specification, or the dealer's going to do it. The dealer's going to do it, because I'm obviously, I would think it would get rather expensive to fly somebody out from a factory all across the country, teach you about your fire trucks, to get your local dealer to do it. But this is a class that can't be boring, stiff, and filled with "I'm going to protect me" information. So you guys can't do it. I mean, we have to engage those firefighters to the way they're learning now. I mean, it's not, death by PowerPoint, and they can't be. You can't sit in a fire truck and go as the instructor and go, okay, this switch over here does this, and they can't see the switch because there's only so much room in a fire truck. So how interactive we want to make that, how much we want to use video or pictures to help them engage in that, and then get on there and start getting to ask questions. It's just, this is an important piece of apparatus. I mean, I took for granted a lot as a young firefighter is that, it's got a steering wheel, it's got lights, it's got a power call, hose and ladders. Let's go. When it breaks, I'll get another one. My career fire department go, oh, that one broke, we'll get you a reserve. Ride around on this one. And that's probably by a different manufacturer, a different ladder setup, and we're just going to throw you in it. And then it's just something we got to start paying attention. I feel that we need to start paying attention to engage the people that are going to be driving the truck a year from now or 2 years from now. Because, if we do that class, whether the factory does it or the dealer does it at the firehouse, is that how are we engaging the people that are in the pipeline, a year from now or 2 years from now, to get that education piece? Because, if we give it to the first, let's say the 20 people that are there, there's probably 10 more in the pipeline that are getting ready to come up, and they either maybe they weren't afforded the training, felt like they didn't need to attend it, or, what are we going to do about when they are now ready to drive, or feel like they're ready to move up to do that driving piece? Where can we access this information for them so they can go back to this whole class and understand it, and they have a resource to go back to? Because a lot of the questions, some of the really dumb questions that I want to ask during the day, I wait till I get home and Google them, so I don't feel so stupid when I ask the question to the mechanics. But is there a database, to understand how a DEF system works? I mean, you and I and everybody on your podcast, we throw around DEF and DEF systems and DEF headers and DEF pressure sensors, and like we're these highly technical people. But does the firefighter that's driving the piece of apparatus know why do we have a DEF system? How does it work? Why is the exhaust so hot when it's, you got it in regen? And they just don't know the answers to these questions. I mean, it was as simple as today. We had a firefighter who didn't have the tank to pump open, is trying to check a pressure governor. It's just these little things that we, and I don't know if it's, we have the factory or the dealer deliver the training, and then have some website or, website that shows my age right there. Because nobody likes websites anymore, but just a cache of videos of, here is, pressure governor 1, 2, 3, 4, is its model number, and this is how it operates. And this is the parts and pieces that function in it. And I think that's just going to make better drivers or operators or engineers, or chauffeurs, whatever you want to call them, as they kind of go up. Because I see as the fire service gets younger, and I'm sure the same thing got said about me when I came into Fairfax at 19 years old, is that you know eh, they're not as they don't ask. I feel like they ask a lot of questions, but it's not about the right things. And I don't mean that in a mean way. It's just that, do you know what a DEF system is? You keep using that as the example. What is the canister? What are all these tubes hooked to it? What is the tank? Of course, we could get people to stop putting DEF in diesel. That would be an extremely great thing to do. If somebody wants to invent a thing where a DEF nozzle will not go into a diesel tank, that would be fabulous. But all these parts and pieces they need to know about, and if they just need to click on it on somebody's website or somebody's like Target Solutions cache on there, all these parts and pieces that are on the rig, DEF systems, pumps, pressure governors, flow meters, all this information that's on there, and it can even be almost as simplistic as, hey, you got a portable monitor, like a RAM monitor or a Blitzfire, whatever they want to call them. What are all the parts and pieces of that? It's like, how low can the nozzle go? When does if it kicks up, all these things that need to go in there. I mean, the education is boundless, I think, for our firefighters that are going to be our drivers. And I think it hinges on the dealers and the manufacturers providing that education to these firefighters. Now, once again, you could have a fire department that say, no, we don't want any of that. You can't mandate us unless it's an aerial, of course. I think that's pretty much mandated through NFPA, but it's just good pieces. So I'll stop for a minute because I need to take a drink. So tell me what your thoughts are on it, or.
Well, it sounds like the problem or the issue you're identifying. I think it's two things. It sounds like it's two things. One, there is a gap between whatever you receive in your certification level training, whether it's ladder op, aerial ops, or pump ops, at a fire academy level. So there's a gap between that training and then what is actually backing into your firehouse. And what comes with it. But it also sounds like there's an institutional knowledge problem where, maybe sounds like almost like practical information isn't being passed down to the up and coming drivers, so that almost, so that they understand what is happening. It's almost like when we talk about pumpers, what's happening behind the pump panel. You have to understand what's happening behind the pump panel in order to to understand what it is you're trying to accomplish. And it sounds like there's some institutional knowledge that isn't getting passed down, and then there's also this gap between what's backing in and what they're being taught at the academy, and how and it sounds like you're suggesting that the dealer training, good, not just here we put it in a pump gear, but the in-depth dealer training or factory training is working to bridge that gap.
I think it should work to bridge that gap. I think that's, for sure. We when we receive pumpers, we can get the dealer training, whatever, but it's it's a PowerPoint, and not much hands-on and going, what's that, stuff like that. But to go back to go to certification training is that, yeah, that is a big deal. I think that, having to sit through this. So I've had to go back and get a lot of pro boards. When I left Fairfax, pro boards weren't a big thing. And then, I moved to a different, state and come back, and all this pro board stuff's here. So, there's a certain time frame that you can get all this sort of stuff. So I've been going back to a lot of pro board classes to get the certification, and sitting in the class and going, this is not what's going on. And I'm an old guy, this is not what's happening in the field today. This is not what's happening on our streets. This is not what's happening in our fire apparatus. So, and then, we're going to teach you all this stuff. And then, poor training academies or training centers, whatever, they're riding, they got some old pumper in there that's probably got some spring pressure governor on it, rather than, that's not realistic to what the men and women are going to be using out in the field. Because, everybody's challenged with apparatus. It's a hard thing. Even some of the diehard places in the state of Delaware, which, near and dear to my heart, they just don't have as many apparatus on the floor, because one, a membership, two, it's the financial burden of it all. Having reserves and having extra rigs. So it's not like they can go, hey, training center, I got 3 or 4 guys taking this class, guys or girls taking the class. We'll bring the pumper down so they can learn how to do it on ours. And they just can't afford that because of operations. So it's a challenge with certification. And I think that the books, and you could name your training academy's book when, we're not going to call them out. It's because it's not their fault. I mean,
right.
It is what it is. I mean, you just can't keep up. And they're teaching things, some things right, and some things wrong. And look, and I know I'm going 50-50 on it, but I feel like certification training can be better, and we just have to figure out a way to do it better. So when the firefighters go out there, they have a better understanding of everything that's on the rig that they're going to be riding around on, not some rig that's 25 years old that's sitting at the training academy or something like that. So, and I would think that the pump manufacturers, just sticking with the engine one, since you kind of went to that one, is that I'm sure that there's a lot out there that we can get them into, and having resources for understanding what I understand. A lot of people understand what impellers do, just what they do, how, flow meters work, how the gates work, how your tank to pump works, what your tank, all these things that you think are rather easy and self-explanatory, when you're talking about it in class, and then realize that, are you really reaching your students? This is, the conversation that you and I've had before is the problem with manufacturers is skilled labor, is one of their problems, is skilled labor. I mean, teaching somebody how, manufacturers teaching people how to use screwdrivers. I mean, that's a real thing. That's not made up. I mean, it's, or electric tools or battery powered tools, or, all these different tools. And that is the generation that's jumping into our fire apparatus now. So we need to train them a little better and train them at how they need to be trained. And I'm not catering to the younger generation, and saying everything how I learned it is bad. It's just that if we ignore it, it's just going to make things worse. It's just going to, we have to figure out a way to get them in their attention span and their understanding, to get this education to them. So.
Now, where do you suggest this gets spelled out? Is this something that folks should be putting into their spec, and spelling out exactly the type of and level of training they want to get once that rig lands, or is it just something that you work out with your dealer, just as a matter of course? I mean, should it be in the spec somewhere that your expectation is that? And I guess it's almost more along the lines of a train the trainer thing almost. I mean, I can remember when we got our most recent ones, the dealer came in and it was a group standing around the pump panel, listening to them. But it almost seems like, one of the, there needs to be almost a train the trainer, so, because and it's hard because you were talking about on the volunteer side, you don't know how big a gap there's going to be between, me as a driver and our newest driver. And then by gap, I mean like the time period, I could be driving for 12 years, before we get anybody interested in coming up, only because, recruitment being what it is, just as an example. Whereas, in your career department, it's probably a little bit more frequent, having that. But going back to because I got off on a tangent there. Going back to that, where should this be something that's in the spec?
I mean, it can't hurt. I mean, it can't hurt. It can't hurt at all. I mean, I think it's, to say, hey, we require, factory or dealer training on all systems on the newly received apparatus or whatever. And look, I failed too. I mean, I failed too because I know I've wanted to do this, and just can't carve out enough time to do what I want to do. I mean, because it should be a video. It should be something that they, a firefighter that can go on their phone and get. Um, and when they're sitting at the firehouse or sitting around, whether it be career volunteer, and go, oh, this pump pressure governor is model number 1234. Let me find, is there a cache of information on a department website or a department training site, or is it on the manufacturer? Is it on the dealer's websites? That all these different things that we can have for these firefighters. And once again, it's got to be, 15 minutes, man. You're pushing it at 15 minutes, to get somebody's attention, to get the information out. And I'm beginning to think that's me too. Sometimes is that, give me a bunch of information. Let me digest it, and then I'll go back and watch a video on it. But it's still shocking to me to see the firefighters that are out there that are actually driving our apparatus that don't know what I believe all the stuff they need to know about that particular rig. So it's just something that just kind of struck me. I when I was in Twin Valley yesterday, and I was telling you is that they had the factory training, they had the dealer come out, and then we had come out as traditions to do an additional part of it. So I mean, they've embraced it. Getting all kinds of different levels of training from different viewpoints. So the manufacturer is going to look at it differently than I am, because every time I ask, I go, what did the manufacturer tell you, about your aerial? Let me show you what it can do. And then whatever the dealer's stuck between, the manufacturer and the customer about what they want to do. So it's something that should be in a spec, I think, and something that needs to be delivered each and every time, and it's got to be relevant. A lot of times I believe the manufacturers are very generic with it. It's almost like the instructor, whether it be the dealer or the manufacturer, more or less needs to take that component list, that spec, and then make the program about that truck. Because I think you really lose a lot of people when you're teaching generic. Because it's not something they're interested in. Well, most trucks we put this pressure governor, but on your truck we put this one, and and it needs to be about that vehicle. The pictures need to be about the vehicle. The videos need to be about the vehicle. And is it time consuming? Is it going to be expensive? I don't know. Expensive, the right word is. It's going to have some expense, I would imagine. But I think you're going to capture a lot more people and get them educated a lot more, and then avail yourself to getting asked dumb questions. I mean, it's being a good instructor would be, hey, looking at the guy in the back row, that is not in the front row, goes, all right, man, do you know what this is? Do you know what this EGR valve is? Do you know what this def canister does, and blah blah blah. So it's just it's something interesting that just kind of struck me here in the last couple of weeks, and Twin Valley kind of brought it up to me yesterday, because I asked them all the training they had, and they gave me all that, the factory, the dealer, and ourselves, and I'm like, man, these guys get it. I mean, they're understanding what they need to get their rig in service. So,
well, it's interesting. The part of your answer a minute ago was for some of these resources, it has to be something they can get on their phone, a website or whatever. And that kind of rolls into the other topic I wanted to talk about, although it's not about the training end of it. It's about the social media end of things. And you also gave me another idea, because we're not going to cover it here because I need to work it out a little bit. But we haven't even talked about how AI impacts all this. However, it was AI that sort of brought me into the next topic, and that's the pros and cons of using social media to help research rigs. You've said it. I've heard you say it. I know that Bill Adams has said it on numerous occasions in articles that he's written for the magazine, that, today, and he was saying this 15 years ago before we were even really talking about social media as much as we do now. But he said today, when a dealer goes into a fire company to talk about their product, the people in the room that dealer representative is talking to are way more informed about what it is he or she is gonna talk about, and about their competition, what their competition offers. And there are a variety of reasons for this. Probably back when Bill was first saying it was because of the World Wide Web. It was because of websites. Today, it's a little bit of social media. And like I said, we haven't even gotten into AI. That's going to have to be a whole other one. But it was AI that made me think of this because we posted an article on fireapparatus.com. It was last week. It was about Asheville, North Carolina's rescue tiller.
Mm-hmm.
To me, this was not a new thing. I mean, I had seen one. Portland did one. Portland, Oregon did one. It's got to be almost 20 years ago now. Probably let's say between 10 and 15 years ago, they spec'd one out. So it wasn't a new thing to me. We posted it. We shared it on our social media channels, and I can't tell you how many people. Well, we got accused of using AI by one person. And then there was somebody else who said, "Is that AI?" I mean, and so like it, but it struck me, right now the way AI is on a lot of things, you really got to trust but verify a lot of what you see. And I think that on social media, there is. This is going to come out wrong. I'm not anti-social media, so don't take it that way. But you really do. I mean, I find it myself sometimes. I'll say, not fire related, but I'll say something to my wife where I saw, on Facebook, blah blah blah. I said, and then I'll follow it up with, of course, it's on Facebook, so who knows? And again, I'm not. There's a lot of misinformation out there, so you really do have to be careful. But I wanted to talk about using social media to help research rigs and the pros and cons of it, because there is, I know in my own firehouse, and I've said a couple times, we're in the process of doing building a new rescue. I say we, not me. The apparatus purchasing committee is doing this. I say we as Weldon, but I'm sure that there are people on the committee that are standing in line at, I don't know, the Wawa or something, scrolling on their phone, their favorite, fire truck sites and things like that. I see a lot of fire truck accounts that, I mean, that whoever's running this doesn't know anything about fire trucks, you know what I mean? So I just wanted to talk about that, from your perspective. I'm sure you must. I mean, I see you on there, sharing different things. Sometimes it's some of the stuff you got in the background there, but often it's what's going on in your own county and your own department, and and I see that on the social channels. So I guess first let's talk about what's good about using social media to research. When your department or your company, fire company's putting something together, looking to put a spec together for a new rig. And what are the pros of using social media to help you along with that as you do your research?
Yeah, I don't use social media as much as I use the manufacturers' websites, the dealer websites. So then I can actually, it's more trustworthy. I don't know if that's the word I want to use, but I would say that the dealers today, regardless of manufacturer, I think have definitely stepped up their game, especially since COVID, when we started doing the virtual inspections,
Mm-hmm.
where you took pictures of truck. Now everybody has somewhere on their website, trucks in production, and then it has weekly or bi-weekly updates of that truck being built. Whether from frame rails all the way to painted and all the graphics on it. Then they also have the trucks that have been delivered, and they're putting a lot more information on there. So hey, I can get pictures of the truck. I can download the engineering drawing. There's all these different things, and those are the ones I kind of more trust. I will go look at Asheville's tiller rescue with AI enhanced 6 wheels on it or something, and go, all right, let me dig a little deeper here and find out if this thing's actually true. Let me see who made it and see if it's actually on their website, and then kind of have that contact back and forth. But it's fabulous to be able to type in something. I don't use AI. I'm a little archaic about that. I just don't trust it quite yet.
Mhm.
But I'll go to the internet and to the Google machine and go in there and search and go, hey, tiller trucks in Northeast or whatever, or tiller truck in Los Angeles City or something, and kind of get the information. Go, well, here's a picture of the truck. Who made it? Let me go back to their website, find out, do they have the prints on there? Do they have the pictures on there? Taking a look at what's special on it, and then kind of researching that, writing that stuff down. You are right is that it is very dangerous to have people come into these meetings, whether, with customers or with, as consulting, and go, well, ABC fire department has it on their truck. Why can't we get it on my truck? Well, they're carrying 1,000 gallons of water. You're carrying 500. They're carrying X amount of hose. They don't see all the variables behind it to get things to do. I mean, and look, even I don't. I mean, I don't understand why I got told to know so much at an engineering conference recently, what we talked about. But there's parts and pieces behind there that I don't see, or requires engineering, or requires a computer software program to get things right. For an aerial, it's just all these different things that happen there, and it's great to get the information, but you can't go into a meeting and profess to be an expert on something if all you've done is research on the internet or using social media platforms. Because just like you said, is it real? I mean, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. I scroll it and go, how much of this is actually true? And then now I got to go, peel another layer off the onion to go, oh, it's a nice looking rig. Is it really a really nice looking rig, or is it something that's computer generated, or, it's not true. So it takes a lot to do that. I just don't like it when people go, hey, ABC Fire Company's got this. Why can't we have it? And there's usually some reason. Now, look, fire truck manufacturers have been caught in a fib every once in a while about not being able to do it. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, we got to take our time and look at these things, and I use it all the time. I mean, I look at prints. I go to all these manufacturers' websites, look at their rigs, download the prints. Looking at wheelbases, looking at overall lengths, overall heights, looking at compartments and stuff like that to try to see what I can incorporate into my next rig or customer's next rig or anything like that. So I think it's pretty important, and it's never going to go away. So no matter how we argue about it or discuss it, it's not going to go away. I just want you to use it intelligently and responsibly. How's that?
So your go-to is more the World Wide Web, the Google, and then finding it out there. Now, are you doing that on your phone, or are you doing that on your desktop computer or your laptop?
Well, Ricky likes the big screen because he wears these things. So I like doing it on my computer, but I'll usually get my ideas or go, hey, let me do some research on this from on my phone, looking at Instagram or looking at TikTok or looking at, Facebook or one of those social media sites, somebody posts a rig or something. Obviously I believe that the manufacturer's social media platforms and the dealer's social media platforms have much more reliable information. And then the fire companies that, post about their new rigs, that's important also. But now that just gives me a reference of who to go back to. Oh, look at this great TikTok video of this fire truck. Now who built it? Let me go back and find out from the dealer's social media, manufacturer's social media, or, go into the World Wide Web and try to find all the stuff that I need to actually get all the correct information.
Well, it almost seems like it's okay to use it for your research. But, when you were answering the first time there, I found myself thinking about hose beds. Low hose beds are very, they're very popular right now. But Bill Adams has said it, like you can't just go and say, I want the FDNY style hose bed, because that hose bed is built around a very specific design that works for the FDNY. If you just see a picture of like the lowest hose bed you've ever seen, and it's just the rear. Well, you have no idea, if it's that low because they had to make the truck, 3 feet longer, or if they had to, reduce the size of the tank, to a certain extent to get it to be that low. Where I'm going is that it's okay to use, but you have to take that extra step to say, all right, what's the name of that fire department that bought it, and then what who made it, and then you can go back to their website, find that drawing, like you said, the engineering drawing, and now you're going to see, oh well, okay, that's that low because they did this, that, or the other thing. So I mean, like overall length. Well, you may just see on a piece of paper, or like, in the back of the magazine here, where we run pictures all the time, or the special deliveries that we do, where the author is always saying what the overall length of the rig is, but what he might not mention is that the wheelbase is shorter and the overall length is shorter because they didn't do cross lays. Everything comes off the back, or something like that. So you really do have to take that extra step to go back. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but I was really surprised. I mean, like, the is that AI was one thing, but the other user, man, he came right at us. He was, really. And where and the other part of it where I think about it, not so much on the fire side, is I can replace an alternator, I can change my oil, easy, or mechanical things like that. So, but I follow a lot of these other things on Facebook sometimes. But once you get into the algorithm and it figures out what you like, so there's this one guy, I may have mentioned it to you before, Vice Grip Garage, and he always it's kind of the same formula every time, but it's, here I am in the middle of nowhere. I bought this car sight unseen. I have no idea if it'll run. Let's get to work. And then, he's got his thing where, he looks at the engine. He always tries to get it to rotate first to see if it'll eventually, turn over. So he'll just turn it manually. But now social media channels know that I watch this a lot, or that I click on that a lot. And then suddenly there's these, I watched some other ones where it's a barn find, and they wash it and everything. And, well, there are very, very clear AI generated videos to try to match what I've been watching on these other things where, it's so like, they'll open the door and you're like, that is clearly not the inside of a Chevy square body. You know what I mean? Like, this is very, it'll have a shifter on the column, and it'll have a shifter on the floor. So now, you're like, okay, what am I looking at here? And no clutch. So, so those things are the things that stand out to me, where it's like, okay, that's entertaining, but you got to verify, I guess, kind of what you're looking at. But the World Wide Web is your go-to. It is for me too. Yeah. I don't know. I guess I'm showing my age with that. And I also prefer doing it on a desktop, just because I like, I would rather look at that engineering drawing on a larger monitor than my phone. I just get a better.
Yeah. And I mean, I would love to see him put component lists up there, so I can see what all the components are on there. I don't need prices or anything like that. I just need, hey, it's got this load manager, it's got this pump boss, it's got this, pump, it's got this, this many stages. So you just kind of scroll through it, just, getting all that information out there and kind of understanding. And then obviously, if I'm able to look at a component list, I'll know what I need to train them on. So, that'll kind of help us out a lot together also.
And that's why we are all way more informed before the dealer walks into the firehouse, than we used to be. But, again, that's not to take away from what the dealer is going to bring to the table, of course. You could say, okay, it's got this pressure governor, it's got this, multiplex system, it's got this pump and all that kind of stuff. But you think you're doing your homework and saying, okay, this is the list of stuff, like, okay, go build it. And, the dealer is going to say, like, okay, well, hold the phone here. This is only going to work if we do this. And, so there's a lot of there's a lot of things. But I got to think it's probably helpful in some ways to a dealer, and sometimes they must walk away going, "Oh my God, I can't believe I just sat through that." But
For sure, I'm sure that's what they say.
well, speaking of what's upcoming and some, doing research and stuff like that, we do have FDIC coming up. I think I know that you're the type, you're there, you're going to walk the floor, you're just going to be kind of looking at all the trucks that are out there just to see what kind of catches your eye. But beyond that, is there anything specifically you are looking for this year to get information on that's going to apply, to what you're doing, at your fleet manager
Yeah,
job?
I want to go to the Cummins booth. I want to find out what's going on with motors. That's definitely one. I'm going to go to find out what PACCAR's doing. I want to find out what's happening all there. I want to see what's going on with the EPA. EPA standards, or I want to see what the manufacturers doing to hopefully help with our production problems. And I'm not interested in technology. I'm not interested in new things. I want you to get this process down. And I think we talk about social media. I would say that the manufacturers have definitely stepped up their game on explaining to us what's going on in their facilities. On more than one occasion, on more than one manufacturer, I've seen put out press releases on how they're building a new building, or how they're going to increase production, or they've changed this or changed that in their factory. And once again, that's good information for all of us to have as we go look at, if we're going to buy something, to go look at all those things that are happening in these different manufacturers and go, yep, they're investing back into their production rather than their pockets. I guess I'm not accusing them of that by the least little bit at all. But that's what I want to see. And then I want to see some cool rigs. People put in a lot of effort. The rig that's going to be on the floor next week was ordered 4 years ago. Or 3 years ago. So where they're at, and we haven't, you don't hear about them, so somebody could have built a beautiful, highly functional rig, and you don't know anything about it because was ordered 3 years ago, and they may have announced it on some webpage or TikTok or social media, but 3 years ago, man, I've forgotten what happened 3 years ago. So now I'm going to see this new rig when it gets there,
and probably we're just. That 3 year mark makes it a little tough, but we may start to finally see some NFPA 1900 compliant rigs.
Yes.
What I'm interested in seeing with them, because most of what we've seen over the last 2 years was probably 1901, still 1901
yes,
compliant,
sure.
because when they, but I'm interested in seeing the seating, the seat. It's been explained to me a number of times. But the seating still confuses me a little bit in terms of the spacing, and how there's primary seating and secondary seating, and where they can all be. That's all in the new standard there. So I am interested in seeing what different departments are doing when not to address that and still carry the number of people that they want to carry. I think I mentioned, I think I'm 99% sure I'm correct on this, but I was talking to one of the people on the rescue truck committee, and I was like, well, just remember, if we go to a style like your department style, that's one thing with the bench in the back and no crew cab. They go with the crew cab, there's no more putting 4 seats across the back. I don't think you can put 4 pack seats across the. I could be wrong, but I believe that has changed a little bit. So, but what I said to them, same thing I'm saying to you. I'm 99% sure, but you're gonna want to look into that before you get too far ahead, and how many people you're planning to carry and things like that. So that'd be interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing those types of things. As my deputy chief has asked me to take as many pictures as I possibly can of the rescues that are there. I know there will be rescues there, so that'll make him happy that I can get a few pictures there. And, I mean, well, and I think that, and admittedly, I mean, like, the engine manufacturer can tell us so much, but it really is going to be dependent on the apparatus manufacturer to figure out what the engine builder is giving to them is going to fit overall into the rigs we're running. So he can sit there and say, well, you're going to have to carry a bigger alternator now, and there's going to be this other after treatment device that you're going to have to figure out. One of the things with that is I'd like to find out. It doesn't impact me because our exhausts are always low, but vertical exhausts, as of last October, they hadn't quite figured out how that was going to work. So yeah, I'm interested in finding out that. Hopefully that's one of the things. Hopefully that's one of the things we will find out next week.
Yeah, I'm quite sure that they'll go, hey, nice show, great food in Indianapolis. I'm going to go to the Overroad Truck Show next week, where they're going to buy,
well, yeah, yeah,
5,000 more engines than the fire service, So.
But we need to know. I mean, we need to know so that we can start to plan, because there's only so many places on the engine or around the engine that you can put that larger alternator. The other after treatment portion of that is going to have to be placed somewhere. So, I have a feeling the manufacturers will have a better idea, at least, because there have been prototypes that have been out there for a little while, so they've been able to sit there. But there will be nuances between the manufacturers, because I mean, we get inside and they all do typically look relatively the same inside, but there's a lot going on under that engine, in that engine tunnel that we don't see unless we tilt the cab. Going back to your dealer training and factory training, we got to tilt the cab. We got to see what's going on. We have to know how all this works. So, well, I guess I'll be seeing you next week.
Yep, I'll be there.
Ricky's going to be there. We're going to have our advisory board meeting, so hopefully he'll come with lots of ideas on how to improve everything we're doing, so that we can continue to meet the audience's needs. If there is a topic that Ricky and I haven't covered, or a topic that you'd like addressed in one of our other podcasts, whether it's moving water or any of the other ones that we do, let me know. I'm at chris.mcclune@clarionevents.com. I always say that if you do happen to see me at the show, don't be afraid to stop me and ask me questions about why we're doing what we're doing, or tell me I ought to be doing something different. I'm open to all types of ideas for this. So make sure you stop me and say hello. Other than that, by the way, all of our podcasts are archived at www.fireapparatus.com/podcast. So again, Ricky, my thanks to you for sitting down with me today and sort of humoring my disjointed podcast this time, my list of topics this time. But I think we covered a lot. I think we actually did connect some of that research and the training together pretty nicely. So that worked out. So I will see you next week. And everybody else, have a good one and stay safe. Thanks again, Ricky.
Thank you, Chris.